Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm Dave Mastovich, CEO and founder of Massolutions, the world's only no bullshit marketing firm. Today, we have a special guest, Dr. Janet Stout, President and Director of Special Pathogens Laboratory and Research Associate Professor at the University of Pittsburgh Swanson School of Engineering in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Janet, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're excited to have you because you're going to talk to us and teach us a lot about Legionella, Legionnaire's disease. You're a clinical and environmental microbiologist recognized worldwide, folks, for more than 30 years of pioneering research in Legionella. Her expertise includes disinfection and control strategies for the prevention of Legionnaire's disease and other waterborne pathogens. We're going to dig into all that with the current events of how today we've seen some major stories around this. But first, the loyal No BSers know my first question is always, tell us about your career path, your journey.
Well, it's probably not the usual journey for those that are running their businesses and entrepreneurs. And in fact, we talk about myself as being the accidental entrepreneur. And so I'm a biologist, decided to study microbiology and infectious diseases. And probably when I think back on it, the early inklings that I was going to be following science were, I was down in the woods collecting frogs, and in high school I was the kid in the biology class that raised their hand to volunteer to do things. And I have this great memory of raising my hand one time, and we were studying mitosis, and the teacher said, well, I need somebody to go out on a rainy day and collect frogs, like from the road. And not any frogs. They had to be pregnant frogs so that we could get the eggs out of the frogs to do this experiment. And I was like, okay, I don't drive, but hey, my sister did. And so one night we went out and we collected frogs, and sure enough, succeeded in getting pregnant frogs. I guess we were just lucky. So that's sort of the way that my scientific journey started. And then, of course, went to Clarion University in biology. Really enjoyed microbiology, and here's the first fateful event. I decided to go to graduate school, was calling the University of Pittsburgh Life Sciences to find out about my application, and by mistake, I was transferred to the Graduate School of Public Health microbiology department. I was like, what? Because that was about the connection between microbiology and disease, which was so much more what I was interested in. And then preventing disease. And so I ended up getting my master's and PhD at the Graduate School of Public Health. And
so hold on a minute.
Yeah.
You're saying that this world-renowned career partially happened because you called to check on one program and they transfer you to another one.
Yes. Doesn't that give you goosebumps?
That does give you goosebumps.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes.
Go on.
So that was the first fateful event. The second one was, after your first year, you have to find a mentor and a project. And I was interested, as I said, in the connection between microbiology and disease. And that's called epidemiology. And I was particularly interested in bacteria. And so that was what I was looking for. And just by chance, the Pittsburgh VA hospital was at the beginning stages. So remember, this is 1980. Just 4 years after the American Legion outbreak, where the whole world learned about Legionnaire's disease, they had this outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in the veterans in the hospital. Just at the time, I was knocking and looking for a project and a mentor. And so again, as fate would have it, that's where I landed. And the rest is, as they say, history, because the first publication from that initial work was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1982, which is the most prestigious medical journal in the world. And my mentor, Dr. Victor Yu, he made me first author, which is unheard of. And it was, I think, in his mind, a good investment in the future of the research from this young student.
That is a great story. So tell me a little bit more about Dr. Victor Yu, who became a mentor, and how did that all happen?
Dr. Yu was chief of infectious diseases at the VA Medical Center and also a professor of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh Infectious Disease Group. So he was well known in all kinds of things in infectious diseases, mostly other bacteria and antibiotic resistance and things like that. And he was just a great teacher and mentor to me, as well as many other medical students that came down the pike. And he really took a tremendous interest in teaching. And he used to say, every patient is a study patient. And I remember these little pearls from him. And he was a great example of hard work. Nothing was below him. I remember some of the infectious disease fellows would come with their toddlers, and he would like babysit them so that the medical resident could actually do research. So that's just another example of how he saw, you really do whatever needs to be done, and that philosophy has stayed with me, and I have emulated that with people that I've had under me.
That is terrific. And so when the paper comes out and the publication comes out and it's in the New England Journal of Medicine, and he puts you on as the first author, is that how you
Yes,
said?
that's right.
So that's like a huge status at any age, and you're having that at your first earlier in your career. So then what happens after that? Build upon that from a career standpoint.
Well, we basically became the center of Legionella research. So every aspect of the disease, diagnosis, treatment, and the thing that was so a paradigm shifting aspect of our publication in 1982 was that after the American Legion outbreak, everybody thought it was in the air conditioning cooling tower. So it's that big thing that's on top of the building. It's got warm water in it, and the investigation from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of that outbreak in Philadelphia said it was the air conditioning. And so after that, everybody ran around looking at air conditioning. Well, there was no cooling tower operating at the VA when these cases were occurring. And over a 5-year period, there'd be over 200 cases. So where was it coming from? And what we found was that it was coming out of the faucet, the water coming out of the faucet and shower that the patients were using. It was in the building water system, which was brand new information. And think about that. It was like we were looking in the wrong place all the time. And so that's why one of the reasons why it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So we were not only refocusing everybody's attention, but then we went, well, how do we stop it, right? Because that's the whole point of not just understanding the disease, but preventing the disease. And what was interesting, and another reason why we rose to such prominence, is because the Center for Disease Control and Prevention said, wait until the patient gets sick and then test the water. And we said, well, that doesn't make any sense. Test the water first. Find out if the bacteria is there, control it, knock it down, and prevent the disease from occurring at all. Doesn't that make more sense to you, Dave?
Yes.
But this is a battle that has gone on for decades and continues to this day, as much as your listeners would find that totally illogical. But we don't go down that rabbit hole as to why, but I'm glad you understand the logic of it.
You go and you point out this thing that's obvious now, but that's the beauty of when someone does something visionary. It seems obvious now, but it obviously wasn't obvious back then. So you ran into some probably backlash or maybe some people doubting, skeptics and so forth. And then you begin to do the testing. So are you saying that back then you and your team created the testing that has evolved into today, which we hear so much about the testing?
Yes, both for the patients and testing the environment. So we were developing specialized culture media to grow the organism from the water in the building, which prior to that work didn't exist, and then using those techniques to say, well, how common is this? And we found out it's about 50% of large buildings like hospitals are colonized with this bacteria, and so there's disease potential there. But then there's also 50% that don't have it, and so you can relax over here. And then we went out into the homes, and we said, well, if it's in the hospitals, could it be in your own home? And so this was another very cool thing. Well, who's going to let us into their house and let us stick a needle in their arm to get blood to test for antibodies and pee in a cup for us? And I'm driving home one day and I look to the side of the road and there's the American Legion, where everybody hangs out. I'm like, they would let us. And so we worked with the American Legion. Over 200 homes of American Legion members opened their doors to us and their veins. And we found out that Legionella in homes is relatively rare. Less than 10% of the homes, it was 218 homes. And all along the way, we're publishing all this work in medical and microbiology journals.
Creative approaches. She's thinking this through, driving down the road, and says, let's use the American Legion, and that helps to play a big role. I'm going to jump around a little bit, which is my nature, but you've really got me excited, and I want to help our loyal no BSers to hear such a great story. So apply that now to, at the time when you're breaking this through, is there a fear that the large organizations, the hotels, the hospitals, that they all could have been causing this? Because that's many years ago. I don't recall anything on the general public, but was there a backlash that, what's going on here? And how did you go about, did hospitals and the hotel industry jump in and say, let's do this? Or was there any kind of fighting back?
I guess the way that I would characterize it, Dave, is that even back then and even now, there was a reluctance to deal with this problem. So back then, and part of the problem was the Center for Disease Control, because they were saying, hey, hospital, don't test the water. And there were instances where we would get calls from the infection preventionist or the infectious disease doctor at this hospital that's experiencing an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, and they tell us, we were on the phone with the CDC, and they said, don't test the water. And we're like scratching our heads, like, why would they, when they know that it's probably in the water and that's the source, why would they tell you not to test the water? Which goes to your question. It's like, why do you want to not know something that's life-saving? Because there's fear of litigation and spending money to prevent it. I don't think those are good reasons not to save somebody's life, but that's what was going on then. And this is where I said even now. So what's happening now is that the position of people like the CDC and others, hospitals, is softening, but there is still not a clear-cut requirement for hospitals to test their water for Legionella and find out if the risk is there. What CDC says now is, well, here are the reasons why it might be important. And one of them is if it's a hospital. So isn't that saying the hospital should test? But it isn't quite, is it? It's saying you could think about it because it's important. So there's this weird stuff still going on. And the hospitality industry, hotels, there are outbreaks associated with hotels, decorative water features, that beautiful thing in the lobby, or the hot tub spa. I'll tell you a story about that later. And so that's still going on. And all we have in the United States, which is different than most of the world, are guidance documents that are totally voluntary, that say, you should look at this if you want to. We're not going to make you do it. But in other countries, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, the Netherlands, France, they all have requirements to test for Legionella, but we don't.
Is the test super expensive? If I were a hospital, let's say UPMC has 35 hospitals. I'm not sure exactly. But let's say they have 35 hospitals. Are we talking $1 million a hospital to do it throughout the year? Like, how expensive are these tests?
No. So it makes perfect sense you would ask that question because, is there a reasonable rationale to avoid doing it that is a cost-based rationale? And the answer is, of course, not. So for $2,000, a hospital can find out is their building colonized with Legionella. Do you think that's too much money to spend to save a life?
Not at all. Is it once a year they do it? Once a quarter? How often would you have to do it do it right?
What I tell people is the most important time to do the testing is the first time, because you don't know if the people in your building, employees as well, are at risk until you find out, is it there? And then once you know that or don't know that, then you take action to correct it. And so that's the most important thing. And I can remember there was a CNN program quite a number of years ago, and they had this middle-aged gentleman on, and his mother had been in a hospital outbreak and died. And somebody told him it would cost $2,000 for that hospital to have tested their water to find out if Legionella was present or not. And he started to cry. And he said, "You mean to tell me that $2,000 could have been spent and my mother would have been alive today?" I mean, how dramatic is that?
Mm-hmm.
So the cost is not a reasonable excuse. And one of the things that we talk to people about when we talk to facilities engineers, for example, at hospitals, we say to them, "How much do you spend on landscaping?" Well, that's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Every year. Well, Legionella prevention is a fraction of that. So it's about priorities. And also, I think, a misplaced need to protect yourself from litigation, the potential for litigation, or who knows what. But if you added up all the people that have died from hospital-acquired Legionnaire's disease since 1977, it's hundreds of thousands of people. And the chance of dying for a person in a hospital that gets this disease is 30%. So it's huge. So this is why you can see that I'm so passionate about prevention, and why, getting back to my career path, why when in 2006, we'll just say there was an unwise administrator at the VA hospital that decided that Legionnaire's disease was unimportant, that the special pathogens laboratory could be closed and absorbed by the clinical microbiology laboratory. Dr. Yu and I went, "Well, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard," fought back. There was a congressional investigation into the VA. We went to Washington, sat at that table with the congressman in front of us, grilling the VA for, are you ready, what they did? The most important thing to me was saving the Legionella bacteria that we had in the freezer. So we had the bacteria, we had the urine, we had the blood. And when they said they wanted to close the lab, the first thing I said is, I want to move that collection to the University of Pittsburgh. We were in the process of doing that when this, we'll say, evil administrator canceled the meeting without explanation, got people to go over there, take everything out of the freezer, and put it in the garbage. 25 years of research thrown away. Out of spite. Out of spite.
Did that story make national news and I just missed it?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this person went to jail then?
No. Kept her job.
That is staggering.
Right. So, but I'm a glass half full person, Dave. So what happened next was, well, what are you going to do? You're at the proverbial fork of the road. And Dr. Yu and I are both affiliated with the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. And so we were just going to, the logical thing is just go to the university. And one day he says to me, "Well, Janet, the worst thing that could happen is we could take the lab private." And I was like, what? Never, ever entered my mind. But as soon as he said it, I said to myself, well, who's to say there's not another misguided administrator at the university that one day is going to say, well, what you're doing is unimportant, and we want you to do something else. And I really don't want to be in that position ever again. And that's when we made the decision to take the lab private and find a new home. And that's the accidental entrepreneur story. So
you start the company, Special Pathogens Laboratory. And the location you started in, is it the same one you're in now?
Yes, on Forbes Avenue.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the first 3 to 6 months of a new business, because I ask that a lot of the guests, because the first year is exhilarating and scary. So tell me a little bit about what you can remember from that first month, year, whatever.
Well, I remember a lot because the VA was trying to fire me at that time, and because we kind of resisted their decision to close the laboratory. So at the same time, I sort of am looking around, are they chasing me? I'm trying to find out, how do you start a new business? And so what I did was I had a friend, an attorney friend, and she had some extra office space. And so she let me work out of her office. And then I just started contacting people that I knew that were already in the laboratory business, for example. Who's your accountant? How do you do life insurance? All of those things that you need to have in order to start a business. And of course, the very first thing that I did is I said to my attorney friend, can you tell me if the name Special Pathogens Laboratory is available as a business in Pennsylvania? And of course it was. And so we captured the name. And then I just sort of systematically put together, these meetings to do this. And then, of course, other people from the laboratory came with us. So Dr. Yu, of course, and then 4 others. The most interesting thing is, okay, we have to start a business. Where does the money come from? It's like we all look around. It's like, not me. You want to put the money in? You want to mortgage your house? Yeah. Well, it turned out that I was the one that mortgaged the house. And then other people contributed. So we have, like 4 or 5 owners of the company. And it was the best investment I ever made, right? And so it was a lot of hard work. I don't think it was scary. Maybe it should have been scary, but maybe this is the diligence of a scientist or something. I just put my head down and like day after day, got up, went, did, looked at a lot of different properties to try to find out where you're going to put a laboratory. And, maybe this was another stroke of luck for me, because I'm sure a lot of the people you interview, luck in quotes, plays a role. And someone pointed me to Forbes and Stevenson building, and it used to be a Red Cross blood bank, and so it was sort of a laboratory type setup, and it was this beautiful old Kaufman warehouse that was refurbished, and we found a home there. And
what year was that?
2006 to end of 2006. We opened our doors to our clients in early 2007.
Is that how many people from the beginning are still there? You said there were multiple owners. How many are still involved?
There are 4 of us that are still together there. Yeah.
Okay. Is Dr. Hughes still?
No, Dr. Hughes retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
What an amazing story, Janet Stout of Special Pathogens Laboratory. And there's just so many things to unpack there, because you had the first fateful event of being transferred to a different department when you were calling about grad school, and then you decide to go in this field. And the second one is you get the chance to work with Dr. Hugh, and you're involved in this great study and this publication and the writing of the study in the New England Journal of Medicine, and then that writes your ticket. And then you have the evil administrator who ends up opening your eyes about the possibility of starting a business. You mortgage your home, you pound away at it. Throughout that, there had to be a lot of leadership going on, and this shows about leadership and communication. Talk to me about your leadership style, how you were able to get things done through all these years.
When I think about leadership, it's sort of like the biology story. There are kernels of that very early in childhood, right? And so for me, one of the things I think about is, that you have your little gang in the neighborhood, and I was constantly organizing them. Like we'd do talent shows in the backyard, and I'd be the MC, or we'd do a little, carnival, and, I'd buy all the stuff to organize it. Or, did you ever do the bury the squirrel, get the shoebox, and you have a funeral procession?
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so I was leading. So there were there were lots of inklings that I had leadership potential. And then, of course, and I always say this, I really do believe that athletics, sports is a great kind of crucible for
Completely agree.
And I had some ability, and so sports is always
What sports did you play?
Well, I played softball, tennis, basketball. My love was basketball, and so I was captain of the basketball team, and when I went to Clarion, I played basketball my freshman year, but then I had to. I forgot to tell you, my first semester at Clarion, I was a business major. Okay, does that make sense? But I was like, I don't like this. And so after one semester, I went knocking over to the biology department, and the chairman looks at me really strange, and he says, we get a lot of people transferring out of biology into business, not so many people coming the other way. So my second semester and going forward, I was a biology major, and then I found out, there's a lot of laboratories and, chemistry and physics, and I just, after a year of basketball trying to fit all that in, I decided I can't do both. So after the second year, I gave up basketball. That's when I tried my hand at tennis, and then I said, look, I have to get serious about the science here and not do it. But what it taught me was, what does it mean to be a leader? Not only do you have to see the whole court, so to speak, but you also have to be someone that people will follow. And some of it's natural, and then some of it is learned. And I think that was my leadership proving ground.
And what's your style with your team? How do you go about leading? You hear these all kinds of different leadership styles based on. They always give an example of someone and say that's an autocratic leader, that's a laissez-faire leader, or this is an empowering leader. Like, just what's your general approach to it?
Well, I'll describe it because I can't really think of a word. So after I describe it, Dave, maybe you can tell me what it is. As I said, I think I have good vision. I kind of see where I want to go, but I highly value the people around me and the perspective and knowledge that they bring. So I make sure that I hear from the key people on the team and then make the decision. So I'm not looking for consensus so much, although it's inclusion, but I'm very good at, like see, do. Okay, so somebody has to make a decision. I'm good at doing that. And so I think that's part of the reason why I'm leading this group. And, I've been doing some work on leadership, not styles, but organization. And they have the visionary and the integrator and all of that. And certainly I play the visionary role. So I pull all this information together. Stephen Covey's famous "Begin with the End in Mind,"
yes,
which is such a powerful thing. And so I think that would best describe how I approach things. It's very humble, and maybe I learned a little of that from Dr. Yu, babysitting the residents' children. Like everything that needs to be done, anybody should do it, right? It's not like there's a class system or a hierarchy.
Correct.
We're all in this together. I just have different skills that you do, and so I'm kind of like the captain of the ship.
I like that, and I share some of that leadership style, and I think that it's much more prevalent today. I think 15 years ago and 25 years ago, that was way less because the command and control could still work in the 80s, even into the 90s, but now you have to really have the inclusive, collaborative approach. So I think that's interesting.
Well, how does that work for you?
The same way. It's interesting. I mean, there's that with anything that you do, in any style, any approach has weaknesses too. So there's times where inclusiveness and bouncing ideas off is fantastic, and getting to a consensus and moving forward. And then there's other times where maybe it took longer, when I was taking a little bit too long to make a decision, or I'm a fiercely loyal person. So there have been times where I was loyal and took longer than I should have to kind of move in a different direction, or to say, okay, this is your role now. The organization's here and you're not there, that kind of stuff, at multiple stops along the way. And the interesting thing about leaders, what I see is we do end up having the same patterns, good and bad, throughout our career, because it's really difficult to just change who you are. So the same things that happened when I was at a multi-billion-dollar company in a senior management position happen somewhat to the degree. I'm not saying I haven't learned. I've learned a tremendous amount, but there are still things that you do with your style that succeed, and there's still things that hold you back. So that's the constant battle I have. Personally, I try to take that stuff and not let it hold me back, the things that I've kind of had in me in my leadership style forever.
Well, what you talk about is really personal honesty, right?
Yes.
Really looking at yourself, without the rose-colored glasses on. And if you can do that and assess your strengths and weaknesses, and then fill in with other people, or even personal growth. That I always talk about. You have to always be better. I'm constantly talking about, doesn't matter who you are in the company, just be better. And it can be something small or something big, but you should always be moving in that direction. And people talk about lifelong learners and things like that. And if you're excited about what you're doing, it's not a chore at all. And in fact, sometimes I go down rabbit holes because I'll start looking up something, and then I read this article, and then that article references another article, and before I know it's like 2 hours later. But I find that enjoyable. Might be a little waste of time, I'm not sure, but that's how you never know whether there's going to be an idea nugget wherever you are following that trail, and just be open to it.
We're exactly doing the exact same process. I do what you say, and I'll say, well, I spent 2 hours on this, but that got me this one idea for a client, and that one idea was worth it then for the 2 hours. So I think that we met through Vistage, and Vistage is about personal and professional growth, and my audience has heard about that a lot. I also do strategic coach with Dan Sullivan, but you also have begun to use EOS. Why don't you talk a little bit about how EOS can help a company?
So, this is a perfect sort of segue about you start down a path learning A, and then it goes to a side path. And so at the Vistage meetings, which is this peer-to-peer leadership for CEOs, or there's a version for COOs, to help bring people together to share both problems and solutions. And then the organization brings speakers in on various topics that inform and educate. And one of those speakers introduced this book, Traction, which is this entrepreneurial operating system concept about how to run businesses more efficiently. And I got the book, I think it was even shared during the session, but I didn't read it at first. And then a couple of the other members interjected that they had read this in the Traction book, and one of them was doing EOS. And then another speaker made reference to it, and I'm going, okay, all right, I'm going to read this book. And I don't read, I get the audiobook, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, there is a lot of good information in here. And part of what it is in our organization, we went from 5 people to, I think we're at 42 now. How do you transition your company through these life stages of a company? And, 10 years ago, I would be like, I don't talk like that. But now I do, because if you don't, you can't succeed, right? You become stagnant, you flatline. And I obviously want us to continue to be successful in this extremely important mission, which is to end Legionnaire's disease. How are we going to do that? And what I read in this book was a framework to make your organizational team more efficient. And there's a number of sort of systematic steps that you go through. And so I said to our COO, I'd like to do this with our leadership. And so we are about halfway through that process, and I'm already seeing the benefits. And so I think the message for any entrepreneur kind of going through the life stages of their company, presumably growing and being profitable, is that you have to invest in your organization in both time and dollars to give them the tools that they need to keep operating at a high level. And most of the people in our company are scientists, right, or engineers, biology people, not trained in business. And so this kind of an education is really necessary, and I've gotten a lot of benefit out of already.
Well, that's great to hear. I love personal and professional growth. I love Vistage. I have read portions of the Traction book. I do get it. I've been talked to by a number of people that sell EOS, and so when you got it, I was like, okay, I want to hear how it goes for them. I also use Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan, which is an entrepreneurial coaching process, which really I think matches up super well to professional services firms. It's helped me to illustrate what we do much better and get better at explaining what we do, because marketing is this nebulous term. If you ask 10 people their definition of marketing, you're going to get 10 different definitions, and you don't get to walk away holding something. Like, they get the test for you. When you guys do the test, they get to see the results. With ours, we're giving you this intangible thing. Well, Strategic Coach has really helped me to position that differently in the minds of the consumer so they can better understand what we do. So all this stuff like EOS and Strategic Coach and Vistage, I just love all of it because it's about personal and professional growth.
And even though Special Pathogens Laboratory has laboratory in the name, on the backside of our card, we have another tagline, more than a lab. And the reason for that is that not only do we do testing for Legionella and waterborne pathogens, but we also do consulting services. So we deliver services to help people to prevent the disease, detect the disease. And then the other piece that we do is education. And so we deliver lectures. We're trying to help people get the information that they need. And then the next one is software as a service. And so whoever imagined Janet, the frog collecting kid on the road with her sister in the family station wagon, says one day, I think we ought to develop some software to help people do this prevention piece. And so yesterday we launched Legidoc, which is a software for water management plans backed by our expertise, but TurboTax-like. Made it easy for people to put in their information and generate this plan that helps them get it done at an affordable price and advance our mission. Get that tool in their hands so that they can test for Legionella and prevent the disease. So, it's just an amazing journey, and I'm so excited for all the things that are happening in our company.
Congratulations on the software. How does that work for someone that is listening that might want to buy that? I know they can go to specialpathogenslab.com probably to find out more information. Well, how does it work? It's a monthly fee?
So you actually go to legidoc.specialpathogenslab.com, which is such a mouthful, I know. Sorry about that. And then that'll take you to the subscription page.
We'll put it on the show notes to make sure.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then from there you can buy a basic plan, a pro plan, which is lets you modify some of the information there, and also support. So what we try to help people to do is it's do it yourself. But if you feel nervous because it's so important, right? People's lives are at stake. You can still buy support from us. So it's a per plan subscription fee, and you can buy multiple plans and things like that. And then there's a second software. Actually, it came out first. So part of the prevention is making a diagram of your water system.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that easy for people? So we devised a software where you just sort of pick and drag all these components of your water system, and it automatically makes this flow diagram. And so are you ready for the name of that? Legimapper.
All right. Yeah, I like it.
So, we're having fun and delivering all kinds of services for prevention.
So from finding pregnant frogs to becoming world-renowned expert on Legionella to now a software company person, you're going to be sitting down with Bezos and
yeah, right.
all those folks.
It could happen.
Yes, it definitely can. I have two more quick questions because I know we've been on for a while, but the one is, with all the ones that have broken out, and I don't want to, I don't know the field well, so I'm just going to throw out like Flint and some others. Take one example that you think exemplifies a problem that the average listener can kind of relate to, where you say, this was what happened that you all remember seeing on the news, and this is what might have worked better.
A lot of people probably did hear about Flint, and that was a terrible, terrible tragedy. 90 cases of Legionnaire's disease. It wasn't just lead, it was Legionnaire's disease. So 90 cases, multiple deaths, and that was mismanagement of the entire city's water system. They switched from one water source, the Detroit water source, to Flint River, and people just consciously made bad decisions, and that's being litigated as we speak. More commonly, you'll see an outbreak, for example, in a nursing home or a hospital. These people are at risk. In this summer in Ohio, there was a brand new $360 million hospital built. You could just imagine the giant scissors, ribbon cutting, big celebration. And within a couple of weeks of opening, 16 cases of Legionnaire's disease and 1 death. Well, what happened there? nobody tested the water for Legionella before they occupied the building. This problem of construction related, brand new building or renovation of a ward, and it's occupied by people with cancer, is well known, goes back to the 1990s. But people still are not dealing with that problem in a proactive manner. And so that's completely preventable if they were just thinking about Legionella before they put the people in that building. So that's one. A hotel, a hot tub. Remember I told you I was going to get back to the hot tub?
Yes, we got back to it. I have it in my notes.
Got back to the hot tub. So, I don't like to be a party pooper, but I'll just share with your listeners information that I think they'd like to know. So I'm giving a lecture to the water treatment professionals that are the ones that go into hotels to treat those hot tubs and spas. And I said to them, just raise your hand if you would get in one knowing what you know about how well or not well they're treated.
And the Hot Tub Association's like, oh, no.
Yeah. Well, if they're treated well, it's okay. But just to tell you, I waited for a hand to go up, and not one of them raised their hand. And I went, good to know, right? So I vowed at that time I would tell people, it's probably not a good idea. And it's not that they can't be managed. It's just that usually in most hotels, there's someone who's got a million things to do. They might dump a little disinfectant in the hot tub once a day, but it's warm water. That disinfectant disappears, and then Legionella, has a party in the pipes, and people get sick. And so this is one of those movies that you don't want to see again and again. There are some that I do, but this is one that I don't. And so
let me go back again, though. You're talking to a group of water treatment professionals that know water, test water, and there's 100 of them, 200 of them, and you say, would you go in a hotel hot tub, and not one person's hand goes up?
Correct.
So that is staggering.
It's good to know, isn't it?
It's really good.
Gives you pause.
It's really good to know. And Janet, this has been a great episode of the No BS Marketing Show. You're a certified no BSer. Amazing stories from the two fateful events, from the growing as a world-renowned expert to taking the leap as a business person to becoming a accidental entrepreneur, as you said it, to also all the cool stories and the factoids to tell us about how for $2,000 a test could be done and prevent this so much more than it is. It's honorable what you and your team do. We're really excited about it, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
To our loyal listeners, thank you for participating with the No BS Marketing Show, recorded in our studios in bold, beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea, and build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.